Dinghai Fusheng Records. Chapter 122. Questionable point. Scene Xiang Shu took a step, hoping to catch up, but the raging fire ruthlessly kept the two men separated. Although his pupils were reflecting the indigo-blue flames from every corner, Chen Xing's body was somehow not in the slightest bit harmed. His corporeal body didn't appear to have been broken, leaving him in a soul state, either. Is this because we're in a dream, or because had time not been reversed, the me in another version of this cascade would have been long dead by the time I arrived in this place? Chen Xing looked at his own body in astonishment, but at that moment, his whole body started to slowly become transparent. He sat down in the center of the altar and lay the Akala blade horizontally on his knees. The blade emitted light that shone bright amidst the raging inferno and gale, and under its brilliance, voices of the gods resounded on the horizon. "You've returned, heart lamp." The two deities flew into the altar and moved apart. Chen Xing. Wait. Chen Xing, still holding the hilt of the sword, got up immediately. He looked up, not knowing what to do, toward the two deities' aspects of divinity revolving around the smelting platform. Akalanatha's golden light shone far and near, while Dipankara's silver luster illuminated every quarter. Dipankara sighed. Sure enough, no other option exists. Come what may, the heart lamp has to be injected into the Akala blade. Chen Xing immediately spoke up, "Akala. This is just our dream. In reality, we've lost the bronze of the Shao mountain, and the Akala blade has already been refined by Chu. Please." Chen Xing put down the sword and knelt down on the ground. He looked at the sky and was just about to explain the entire chain of events when he heard another sigh, this time from Akala. The bronze of the Shao mountain is nothing but the conviction left behind by Xuanyuan Shi to watch over the human world. Dipankara slowly said, there will eventually be a day when the golden crow is obscured by the eclipse, a night when the jade hair returns to its hiding, a period after the setting sun when countless stars are nowhere to be seen, a time when the raging fire stops burning. A dark evening without flashes of lightning nor claps of thunder, and a phase when the shimmer of bones dissipates. In the period where magic is all but silenced, throughout the boundless time, the two deities concluded in unison, only the heart lamp shines as brilliant as day forever. Shortly afterward, Akala and Dipankara simultaneously made hand seals targeting the center of the casting platform. Another rumble, and the blue flames circling mid-air around the abyss suddenly gathered toward the center, combining into one at the altar. Xiang Shu walked quickly to the altar and shouted, "Seen er." The recast Akala blade floated mid-air on the casting platform, its quaint blade reflecting an unusual luster, but Chen Xing was nowhere to be seen. Xiang Shu stretched out a hand in a daze, but the moment he grasped the hilt, a sound as loud as thunder rolled in his mind. The landscape all around him rapidly changed, with resentment hurtling across the plain. Chang'an in the distance was shrouded by fog. Xiang Shu held the Akala blade as the light of the heart lamp repelled the dense fog away. By his side had gathered the last few remaining soldiers of the human race, the five Hus, the people of Qi Li Chuan, the Han people, even those from Dongying, the last inhabitants of the divine land had all come following the Akala blade's guidance. Chen Xing, who had turned into a soul floating in the air, shouted, "Xiang Shu." The other party, however, didn't hear him. In Xiang Shu's eyes, there was only the vast plain riddled with drought-fiend troops and the city enveloped by resentment. The walls, buildings, and even the palace in Chang'an were all covered in purple-black, bitumen-like sticky fluid. A black beam of light shot straight into the horizon from the imperial palace. "Follow me into the battle," said Xiang Shu in a hoarse voice before proceeding to raise the sword in his hand. Under the guidance of the light of the heart lamp, thousands upon thousands of troops rushed into the city of Chang'an, lights glowing brightly whenever they raised the weapons in their hands. The moment the soldiers lifted their weapons high, the Akala blade appeared to produce a strange resonance with hundreds of millions of swords of the human world, Through the protector martial god, the heart lamp's power was channeled to all of the divine land's warriors fighting this bloody battle. The city wall was breached, and the sea of light went to surround Fujian in the center of the palace. Wangzi, Xiao Shan, Feng Qianjun, a drought fiend with tall stature, Princess King He, and the rotten grey wolf, were all waiting for them before the throne. Standing up from the throne holding a halberd in his hand, Fujian commenced a world-shaking battle against Xiangshu. Chen Xing was following Xiangshu, flying behind him, but since he had already become a ghost wandering between heaven and earth, he was unable to influence the situation no matter how much he yelled anxiously. Until finally, Xiangshu's sword at last stabbed Fujian in the chest. A powerful light broke out, the palace crumbled, layer by layer, just like snow melting under the scorching sun, and the purple-black devil god's blood covering the divine land was purified by 7 lights of the world. Xiangshu sat wearily on Fujian's throne. It's not over yet. Another light, transforming into the image of Xiangyuan, appeared in the center of the palace. Son, the deity of war is still going to come back. Xiangyuan. Chen Xing was astonished. Amidst the littering corpses in Chang'an, Xiangyuan said, "You have to gather the other 2 hun of his and thoroughly scatter them. Only this way will his remains be completely sealed under the ground." Xiangshu, however, just stared at the blood-stained ground in a daze. The memory left by his mother soon disappeared. Xiangshu let out a bitter smile. Then, as if aware Chen Xing was there, he raised his eyes and looked at the void in the sky. Afterward, the resentment of the world converged towards Xiangshu's body, and Chu's crazy laughter echoed the moment his 2 hun were restrained by the Dinghai Pearl's formidable power. The next moment, Xiangshu turned the Akala blade around and, clutching it, he changed its shape into a shining arrow and pierced his own chest with it. Accompanied by Chu's cry of anguish, the spiritual power inside the Dinghai Pearl was thoroughly purified. On the throne, Xiangshu in his soul state raised his hand toward the sky. At this time, he finally saw Chen Xing who had been accompanying him. Chen Xing came down from the sky and interlocked his hand with Xiangshu's, and he was soon pulled into an embrace. "In the year that has been lost," Yuan Kun's voice sounded, "this is most of what would have happened in the end." Xiangshu hugged Chen Xing. Together, the 2 of them turned around to look at Yuan Kun. The sun shone brightly upon the divine land. Time stood still at the end of the dream. Yuan Kun, still with the black cloth covering his eyes, turned to face the outside of the hall. The devil's heart and the devil's blood of Chu the heaven and the earth hun had been purified. "But he still will return," Chen Xing said. "The curse has been undone," Yuan Kun slowly said. "What remains is that predestined reincarnation every 1,000 years. It is clear how challenging it would be if you wish to recast the Akala blade." There was a deep frown on Xiangshu's face. Indeed, seeing what would have happened in the possible past's future didn't make things any easier. "First of all, you have to find a new regalia that is able to bear the world's 7 lights, which will serve as the divine weapon's core," Yuan Kun indifferently explained. "Then, after waiting for thousands of li to reach Zoage, you must summon the ancient altar and recast the 6 lights into the regalia. Finally, take Chen Xing's life and refine the regalia with the heart lamp in his hun and po. Only then will you have an opportunity to fight back. Are you aware of what you ought to do now?" Yuan Kun closed his statement. "Since you've obtained the answer, you're on your own." "Bah!" Yuan Kun turned around saying so, disappearing into thin air, and the world of dreams collapsed. Chen Xing opened his eyes abruptly only to discover that he was back on the ship again. The tide was ebbing, there was a lot of hustle and bustle coming from outside the ship as if they had arrived at some coastal seaport. Breaking away from Xiangshu's embrace, Chen Xing sat up and rubbed his eyes. The 2 of them were still naked as before, and sunlight was streaming inside the room. Everything seemed to give an illusion that they had merely fallen asleep on the ship that night. "How long did we sleep?" Chen Xing was puzzled. He looked at himself before moving his gaze to Xiangshu's bare chest. Xiangshu subsequently sat up and leaned against one side of the couch, slightly lost in thought. Chen Xing asked one more time, making Xiangshu return to his senses. Not for long, one night at most. Are you hungry? Chen Xing touched Xiangshu and then himself. Neither of them seemed to have lost weight, so they should have been sleeping for no more than 3 days. Xiangshu was still pondering over the matters that had unfolded in the dream world. The two of them faced one another, and Chen Xing saw the hesitation in his eyes. They had a lot to say, but neither knew where to start for a moment. So, you ended up carrying the Akala blade, Chen Xing began, went to duel Fujian, and finally eliminated Chu. You are really powerful. Ah! You truly aren't afraid of anything. How much would I miss a world without you in it? Xiangshu played it down. Chen Xing recalled that everything Xiangshu had once cherished had been snatched away one after another by Chu at that time. Chen Xing's departure must have been the last straw that had finally caused him to collapse. He had nothing left, so it was a given he had nothing to fear anymore. He only did what he did then in order to exterminate Chu and fulfill their agreement. If that day of the battle on the Fei River Chen Xing had noticed Xiangshu's abnormality and had urged him to stay, Xiangshu might have stayed. In other words, they would have conveyed their feelings to each other earlier, and Chen Xing would have certainly asked him to face the ordeal together regardless of what might happen. There was nothing but death at the end of the road, after all. With them standing hand in hand, what else was there to be afraid of? And if Xiangshu had stayed or had chosen to leave together with Chen Xing, it was extremely likely that things would have gone in the same direction as in their dream and would have eventually led them to carry out a decisive battle in Chang'an. Fortunately, Xiangshu had never confirmed their mutual feelings until the very end and had decided to leave him, all in exchange for giving Chen Xing an opportunity to start over from the beginning again. Chen Xing, unable to contain his feelings, suddenly hugged Xiangshu and went to lean on his shoulder. What? Xiangshu came back to his senses and asked. Xiangshu was sitting cross-legged on the couch with only a thin quilt on his crotch. He had been lost in his thoughts, but he suddenly realized something and looked at Chen Xing. Chen Xing shook his head and focused his gaze on Xiangshu. For some reason, Chen Xing spoke, I keep feeling that Yuan-kun is hiding something. Answering with a hum, Xiangshu then affirmed, he does conceal something. He showed us the events of the missing year, but he never let us see the cause and effect had there been no influence of I Upiter nor Chongming's power, which should have meant that you alone would return to that day 3 years ago. Chen Xing was skeptical for a moment. But since you're not dead now, that future is destined not to happen. Could be, said Xiangshu. I'm certain there's something amiss, since I Upiter did say that before leaving there should be some method to recast the Akala blade. Think about it, since Chu is this important, why didn't they cast the heart lamp into the Akala blade from the very beginning? Right. Chen Xing realized that was the point he felt was wrong for a long time now. The purpose of the divine weapon's appearance was for it to be inherited by an exorcist, who would then use it to protect the human world at the appropriate time and expel Mara's influence. The heart lamp's power too would materialize in a mortal's body and begin to be passed on whenever Mara was about to be born. But if the aim was to eliminate Mara, why would it require both the Akala blade and the heart lamp? Wasn't separating these two forces just superfluous? Since this was a very important matter, why didn't they first inject the heart lamp into the sword first before giving it to mankind? And so, it could be deduced that Akala and Dipankara had intentionally separated these two powers, and that they must have a reason for doing so. I heard their conversation at the altar, Chen Xing said. It's also possible that the mission of the wielder of the heart lamp is to find the person who is capable of mastering the power passed on by the sword. This way, it would perhaps explain the whole process as to why the heart lamp had always guided Chen Xing and let him find Xiangshu. Chen Xing disclosed in detail the things he had seen at the altar back in the dream realm to Xiangshu, who then softly replied, So you became a ghost and followed me all along. That's right. Chen Xing smiled, feeling abashed. I didn't go through the reincarnation cycle. I was reluctant to part with you. Xiang Shu clasped Chen Xing's hand and looked at him for a while. Chen Xing added, I also saw your mother. Did you see her, too? According to that dream, she should have left a memory for you somewhere. As long as we find it. Xiang Shu, however, didn't wait for Chen Xing to finish. He lowered his head and kissed him, and soon, their breathing turned ragged. Chen Xing thought about himself and Xiang Shu, during that dark and gloomy past. Even though they had mutual understandings, he nevertheless had still been very sad the moment they were about to die together. He presumed it would be the same for Xiang Shu. Wu. Chen Xing, who was hugged and laid on the couch by Xiang Shu, softly said, every time, I actually can't help but think. Think what? Xiang Shu was so close his breaths caressed the bridge of Chen Xing's nose. To be with you like this. Chen Xing's brows wrinkled. Even if we're going to die in the end, I still will have no regrets. Ouch, it hurts, slow down. Xiang Shu touched Chen Xing's waist and gently asked, how about now? Ah, much better. Xiang Shu said in Chen Xing's ear, I won't let you leave me, no matter. The noise coming from outside the room was getting louder and louder. Suddenly, they both heard a voice they knew well. I can break this seal. Okay, just free this part, and I'm in. Your Majesty, look, this is a Yaoguai seal, thereupon. Don't come in. Chen Xing and Xiang Shu shouted almost at the same time. Alas, their voices came too late. Chen Xing didn't even have time to think about how on earth did Xian get onto their ship and only heard a sound, as it would seem some spell had been put outside the door, before the door burst open. Standing outside the room were Xian and Sima Yao. Xiang Shu was still embracing Chen Xing at this moment. The two men, only covered in thin quilts, turned their heads toward the door simultaneously. While the emperor and the minister of the great Jin on board looked inside. Chen Xing. Xiang Shu. Xian, you are awake? Pardon. Your Majesty, we should come back later. Xian hurriedly closed the door. Chen Xing and Xiang Shu had temporarily neglected what they had been doing. Fortunately, not many people came, as there were only Sima Yao and Xian. If all of the great Jin's officials were here, Xiang Shu would most likely commit homicide to shut people up as soon as they got off the ship. The two of them looked at one another, Chen Xing's expression showing embarrassment to the extreme. How could they be on the sea? Chen Xing murmured. Let's continue. Xiang Shu straightened up a little bit before saying, I don't know how long we slept, we've most likely docked on the harbor. No. Chen Xing was driven mad. Another day. Xiang Shu put his arms around Chen Xing's waist and carefully carried him up. Maintaining their hugging posture, they moved closer to the window. Chen Xing looked out, only for him to immediately turn tense. This is Jiankang already. The bright sun hung above, shining brightly as people came and went on the shore. The port looked particularly bustling, and there were also 3,000 willow leaves fluttering around, tossed about by the breeze. Ah! Chen Xing exclaimed. How could we arrive in Jiankang, overnight? Put on your clothes and let's get down the sh. Aga! Xiang Shu, who moved once more, looked up at Chen Xing. Chen Xing practically had no way to deal with him. People had just busted in uninvited, but he actually still can go on now. Then you just have to work harder, Xiang Shu said, deadpan serious. Left with no other choice, Chen Xing tightly interlocked his fingers with Xiang Shu and had Xiang Shu lie flat before sitting on his body, straddling him. A deep frown appeared on his face, he looked into the other party's eyes and gasped slowly. One shishan later. When His Majesty heard you had come, Xian on the royal carriage said, he insisted on coming to pick you up personally. Ah. Sima Yao looked at Chen Xing and asked, you're Chen Xianzhen? So we've met a guy, huh? Xiang Shu sat behind Chen Xing on the carriage, his expression wooden, while Chen Xing couldn't stop getting embarrassed recalling that previous scene. He nodded and said, yes, Your Majesty, it's an honor to meet you. I feel particularly cordial with you from the moment I saw you. I am just an ordinary exorcist, though, and am unable to treat hair loss. Tell me, Xie Shixian, when did we arrive in Jiankang? This matter is complicated and not easy to explain, replied Xian. Do you still remember the day you both went to sleep? Xiang Shu suddenly asked, what day is it today? Xian, it's autumn of the 6th year of the Taiyuan period. It's been more than a year since we parted in Chang'an. Chen Xing. We entered the dream and slept for a year on the ship, Xiang Shu said in a deep voice. Time actually went by so fast. And it just happened that the time being stolen, the one mentioned by I Upiter, was also no less than a year. But my looks don't resemble someone who had been sleeping for a full year. Ah. Chen Xing looked at his own body. It wasn't in the slightest bit out of shape. At first, after Xiang Shu and Chen Xing had fallen asleep out of nowhere one day, the Dongying warriors on the royal ship found that the two neither ordered food nor drink the next day. Then again, they had been inside their room for many days in a row and there had been nothing unusual, so this was not at all surprising. It wasn't until 3 days later that people began to notice that something was wrong and knocked on the door, wanting to enter, only to discover a strange magical seal on the door. Chen Xing guessed that the seal must have been Yuan Kun's doing. Daring not to break in carelessly, the ship's entourage could only roam the sea aimlessly, as not only they didn't dare to return to Asuka, they also didn't know what to do. It wasn't until the northeastern wind blew on the sea surface that they left the ocean according to their original plan and sent the two of them back to the great Jin's Jiangnan. If Jiangnan could do nothing as well, they'd have no choice but to return to Dongying and beg for forgiveness from King Onobayashi. After they had moored the ship on Jiankang's port, Xian, who had personally come to check over, didn't feel too worried after surmising that the seal must be placed by some great Yaoguai in order to protect the people inside. He just didn't know whether it would trigger any side effect had he rashly undone the seal, and could only set it aside for the time being without any better options. But when he finally finished his preparations and boarded the ship to undo the seal to look at the situation inside, who would have thought that Chen Xing and Xiang Shu had woken up first? So it's been a year. It was simply hard for Chen Xing to believe that they had left Asuka in the depths of winter. They had sailed for several months before entering Yuan Kun's dream realm, and had now arrived in Jiankang. They had seen the whole city enter summer, and it was more than a year from the time they had left Chichuan during the autumn close festival. Zhen heard that Fujian's really going against the tide in Chang'an, said Sima Yao. He's really out of his mind. Thus, Zhen has come to ask for Chen Xianzhen's guidance. Zhen only wishes to be able to preserve this half of the country handed down by the ancestors. Xian on the side replied, the great cause of exorcism has finally been revived with the revival of all magic. Your Majesty needs not worry, everything is going to be fine now that little Shidi is here. These days in Jiankang, families are refining magic, and people are practicing there. Deo. Wait until we've trained this group of exorcists, and we can let them go together. With these crowds, we could send in so many people and send that Mara to death. The strength of many people will be powerful. If each of them carries a moving fireball, thousands upon thousands of balls together would make. What? Chen Xing suddenly had a slight feeling that something wasn't right. Xian, this too is complicated and not easy to explain, I'll slowly debrief you later on. Sima Yao exhaled again. That's very good, very good. Has Feng Qianjun returned? Xiang Shu suddenly asked. He's back. Xian replied. He's been back for a long time. He was injured a little, but he managed to catch a large group of drought fiends. They're all being locked up and we're waiting for you to come back to deal with them. Chen Xing. Xian pointed to a place. He lives in Qing'er and Dayun's medical hut. Xiangshu jumped out of the carriage and went in the direction of Wuyi Lane toward Gu Qing's medical hut. Chen Xing shouted oi. But Xiangshu made a gesture indicating Chen Xing to follow them, and that he would be back in a moment. Zhen must host a banquet today, Sima Yao said, to properly entertain Chen Xianzhen, who has come a long way here. By the by, has Chen Xianzhen gotten married yet? He. Chen Xing was at last able to boldly and confidently refuse the emperor's matchmaking. He put on a fake, insincere smile and said, I'm betrothed, please don't worry about it. End chapter. Dinghai Fusheng Records. Chapter 123. Re-establishment. Chen Xing was shocked to the core when he saw the dazzling sight of the exorcism department. This didn't cost a single cent of our people's hard-won wealth, said Xian conscientiously, as everything was funded by Jiankang's aristocratic families. The exorcism department was built on the East Mountains hillside. It's at the place where they had scuffled against the Azure Jiao before, on the lifted-up memorial archway carved with words "Good deeds receive good rewards." Going in, one wall was an extremely large mural made of colored glaze inlaid with golds, green and white jades, agates, pearls, and other precious stones that narrated the separation of heaven and earth by Pangu and the creation of time by Zuyan. Towering trees, a personal gift from Sima Yao, planted on both sides had been transplanted directly from the royal courtyard. Written in big words on the center archway was the Great Jin's exorcism department, inscribed by Wang Zizi himself. That wasn't all, as every division inside the exorcism department, be it the Yao restraining division, the devil expelling division, the stargazing division, the magical art division, the magical artifact division, the ancient text division, or the entertainment division, had a horizontal plaque with Wang Zizi's precious calligraphy hung above their door. The story was like this: during the time when Chen Xing and Xiangshu had gone back to Qi Li Chuan over a year ago, Xian had returned to Jiankang and closely monitored Wenqi and the Azure Jiao's movements. When Tuoba Yan and Sima Wei left Qi Li Chuan for the south, bringing the ruler's signet that Chen Xing had entrusted to them, Xian finally decided not to wait any longer and put his plan against Wenqi into motion ahead of time. With Pu Yang's help, he stormed the Dongzhi Bank one night with a man and a drought fiend as his assistants. This poor Wenqi, who was regarded as an undercover spy in Jiankang, still had no idea how his whereabouts had been exposed. He hastily summoned the Azure Jiao after being ganged up on, with the intention to fight Xian to the death. Of course, the Xian from that time was totally not in the same league as the current Xian. A great, world-shaking battle thus ensued from the fourth night period all the way to the dawn. Naturally, the common people of Jiankang also witnessed this pretty much marvelous war. Wenqi was defeated by Xian and driven away in the end, and Xian's name rose to fame throughout Jiangnan. Sima Yao had wanted to confer Xian a title, however, Xian had already been at the top of officialdom. No more titles could be granted to him, and peeling off the state preceptor title that belonged to Pu Yang and giving it to him wasn't a good idea, either. So, when Xian proposed to rebuild the exorcism department afterward, Sima Yao readily gave his consent. At this time, the young heirs to noble families in Jiangdong, having caught a glimpse of Xian's ability, instantly spared no expense to move their riches into the department, seeking an opportunity to practice immortal arts. There were still a lot of leftover funds after Sima Yao had raised capital to build the department, and he allocated it to fill the pit of the Baifu army, solving its urgent problem. The exorcism department had passed through a strict assessment during that year that Chen Xing and Xiangshu were drifting at sea. Of course, it went without saying that the one in charge of this assessment was also Xian. As of now, there were 113 exorcists. Respectfully welcoming the great exorcist. The outside of the department was packed with youths lining up on each side, and they all saluted Chen Xing one after another. Xian gave Chen Xing an introduction as they walked. The most troublesome thing now is that despite us having ancient records about immortal arts, the number of magical artifacts is far from enough. What's more, since it hasn't been long since the revival of all magic, there really aren't any yaos to be caught in this world. And then there's also the fact that Feng Qianjun is unwilling to come over and be my protector. Don't you know the relationship between protectors and exorcists? You really asked Feng Dage to be your protector just like that? Asked Chen Xing. Chen Xing almost passed out, but then he saw Tue Bayan striding over with a smile as he said, "You're here. You're finally here. I really missed you." The people bowed to Chief Instructor Tue Bayan. "UMM. Xie Shikshan," Chen Xing said, "I'm earnestly asking, you don't think this is a problem at all?" Xian calmly answered, "Of course it's not. Given time, there's bound to be more and more yaos appearing in this land under the heavens. If we don't make early preparations, the human race will sooner or later be bullied by them. This is obviously a very big problem, okay?" Chen Xing was driven mad. In the summertime, trees were casting mottled shadows. Inside the medical hut, Feng Qianjun leaned on a couch as he said in a bored tone, "Fame, fortune, glory, and splendor, everything is as transient as a fleeting cloud. Consequently, the amount I've suffered in this life, that too is enough. This is how human life ought to be, we return to ordinariness." Xie Dayun was seeing a patient while Gu Qing was pounding herbs. Xie Dayun's face was apathetic as she looked at Feng Qianjun. Gu Qing softly asked, "Feng Dage, Xie Daran has personally come to invite you several times. Is it really all right for you not to go?" "Why should I go?" Feng Qianjun grumbled. "On a trip to Tukhan, I fought a fierce battle that lasted 3 days and 3 nights against Wang Hai. Now my arms hurt, my legs hurt, everywhere hurts." Xie Dayun asked, "When exactly are you going to be ready to get lost from our medical hut?" A sound came through from the outside at this moment, and Xiangshu barged inside. Gu Qing and Xie Dayun were both startled as a result, and a sense of being familiar with each other rose when they saw this visitor. Feng Qianjun, however, was startled to a stop and asked flabbergasted, "Xiang Xiangdi? How are you here? What about Chen Xing?" Xiangshu first nodded toward the two ladies and casually said, "Pardon." After that, he stepped forward and easily grabbed Feng Qianjun by the collar. Feng Qianjun immediately shouted, "I'm still not okay. I'm still hurt. Wait. Xiang Xiangdi, be civil. Do don't use violence aia. Dage. His injury hasn't healed yet." Gu Qing put down the herb in her hands, but Xie Dayun, who couldn't bear to see him any longer, pulled Gu Qing to a stop. The two of them thus blankly watched as Feng Qianjun was dragged away by Xiangshu, who had suddenly appeared inside the exorcism department. Come, come, come." Xian attended to guests inside the department. "Everyone, sit according to the seating arrangement and pay respect to our great exorcist. Little Shidi at long last has returned, and a lot of work can finally be carried out at this time." Chen Xing was pushed into the center of the hall by Xian as more than 100 exorcists orderly sat on their knees, bent their bodies forward, and said in unison, paying respect to the great exorcist. Chen Xing held his forehead with one hand. He had the illusion that he had inexplicably become the leader of a certain sect and was welcomed back by being kowtowed by the masses. Xian sat on Chen Xing's lower left, followed next by Tue Bayan, who merely looked at Chen Xing with a smile. Chen Xing hurriedly said, "You're all exempted. Everyone should do what they ought to do." Xian said to the crowd, "Next, I would like to invite great exorcist Chen Xing Daran to give a short motivational speech for our exorcism department. Little Shidi is surely able to give encouragement to us." The corners of Chen Xing's mouth twitched. Facing these people who were sitting uniformly on the ground, he was actually unable to say anything. I earnestly request the great exorcist to bless us with peerless advice, a young exorcist below said. Please assist us in cultivating diligently so that we may, on a day quite soon, ascend to the heavens. Chen Xing. Xian once again gave Chen Xing a signal that meant, haven't you always been very good at talking? Say a few words. Chen Xing said, ascend to the heavens. Ascend to what now? To become immortals. The people below said one after another. Everyone said that Chen Xianzhen has peeked into the mysteries of heaven and earth and has also gained 6 abhijna. Ascend your ass. Chen Xing lost his temper. Who did you all hear it from? Everyone immediately shifted their gazes to Xian, who promptly waved his hand with an expression lacking any guilt and said, Shikshan only has to let them borrow ancient texts and have them research by themselves. I really said nothing else. Then. Shidi, if you don't want to talk, it's okay if you just show them your abilities. For example, like this. See. Xian snapped fingers as he said so, and a fireball burst out in his hand. It transformed into a phoenix that orbited around before flying out of the hall. People exclaimed in surprise, and after a moment, they actually started applauding one after another. Chen Xing. Xian said, everyone is learning to circulate the spiritual qi of heaven and earth, and there are already a lot of young talents who have mastered basic magical arts. The young people kneeling down on the front row thus cast spells one after another. There were those who summoned fire, those who called for water, and also those who discharged lightning with the talismans in their hands. Xian said to the crowd once more, the secret method practiced by the great exorcist is none other than the heart lamp. Come, Shidi, show them. Chen Xing took a deep breath before smiling at Xian. Really want to see? Xian hurriedly said yes, while Chen Xing thought in his heart, you don't feel listless at all with this kind of arriving at the treasure ground first and thus becoming famous situation. All right, watch properly then, said Chen Xing to Xian. He then rolled up his sleeves and applied some force to activate the heart lamp, causing a brilliant light to flash upon everyone in the hall. That strong light was condensed by 9/10 of his strength. Immediately, all Chen Xing heard was uniform, blood-curdling screams. Xian covered his eyes in a flash and called out, see that? Did you all see that or not? Chen Xing had taken precautions by closing his eyes earlier. Right now, he saw that everyone who had been illuminated by his flash had bewildered looks on their faces, neither their eyes could see a thing. They could only intuitively clap in their blindness, but the applause was intermittent and sounded strange. The exorcism department has recovered, but have the rules been laid down yet? Why do I feel that you all learned magical techniques in order to live forever and cultivate to become immortals? Xie Shikshan, this really isn't right, ba. When everyone finally regained their eyesight, they all nodded and hurriedly said there are one after another. Xian also gradually recovered and continued, there are 48 clauses according to the handwritten records left behind by the former department, but in the end, based on current circumstances, we have to add or remove some. There are thousands of things to be done, and we've been waiting for you to come any. You'd better pick another person, ba. Chen Xing stood up, wanting to leave. I think Xie Shikshan is quite suitable. AI. Xian quickly held Chen Xing down and urged him. Stay calm. There's nobody else besides you fitted to take on this position. The moment he came to Jiankang, Chen Xing was somehow appointed the person in charge of the exorcism department. Then again, it could be said this moment was still seemingly bound to happen had this still been the period of silence of all magic. After all, there had been no other exorcists in this land under the heavens at that time. He had been the only one, so the only candidate for the great exorcist title was him. He had also wondered whether he would be capable of rebuilding the organization after the revival of all magic, accepting some apprentices, carrying forward the great undertaking of exorcising devils, and also protecting the human world. It was just, everything he had imagined would be things that he did later during his 30s or 40s being suddenly hit in the face like this. He didn't have a way to hold his own. Fortunately, Xiang Shu arrived with Feng Qianjun at this time. Seeing that there were many young people sitting on their knees inside as they looked reverently toward the center couch, waiting for Chen Xing to give instructions, doubts instantly appeared in Xiang Shu's face. "What's this?" asked Xiang Shu. "You're teaching now?" Chen Xing immediately cast him a pleading look. Xiang Shu took Feng Qianjun's arm and swept everyone a glance before saying, "Xian and Tuoba Yan stay, the rest of you go out." "This person is the protector martial god," Xian said toward the group. "May we ask the martial god to also demonstrate his dash?" "Stop yapping," Chen Xing and Xiang Shu said in unison. Everyone turned around without delay and formally paid respect to the protector martial god. Xiang Shu, who was used to being the great Chan Yu, actually didn't feel uncomfortable and just waved his hand to indicate that he got it, before driving those people out. Xian dragged two youths in and motioned to Chen Xing. "These two talented individuals are the best in the exorcism department. They're also in charge of inquiring about ancient records pertaining to the Xiang family and the Akala blade. If there's something to be discussed, we might as well ask them." "Ah. Oh." Chen Xing laughed the moment he saw the two people. "You're Zheng Lun?" "Yes, yes." The scholar was surprised. "Do you know me?" Chen Xing moved his gaze to the warrior following behind the scholar. It was none other than Bi Hun, who had originally been the city defender of Kuiji as well as the city's chief registrar. It might be assumed that after Xian had issued the conscription, Kuiji's provincial governor sent Zheng Lun to deliver all of the Xiang family's ancient records to Jiankang to be given to the exorcism department, and the two foreign transfers had thus entered the department. "You two stay." After exchanging glances, Chen Xing knew that Xiang Shu had something to discuss, so he said, "The rest of you, disperse." After the time it took to burn an incense stick, Xian led a line of people toward the exorcism department's book pavilion. Pu Yan's name was still registered in the Great Jin's exorcism department after its re-establishment, passing on his master's teaching, and acted as the supervisor of his book pavilion. Xian had actually collected every ancient record that could be found, whether it was a missing scroll from the previous dynasty, a cultivation manual, or an unofficial historical anecdote. Everything was stuffed into the pavilion. Shikshan even specially sent people to Mount Hua, Xian said, to transport out our sect's secret arts and rebind them into separate scrolls. There wasn't enough time to inform you, and in all likelihood, I feel you wouldn't get offended by it. Tuoba Yan said. Chen Xing, "Where's Lu Ying? Why didn't he follow you here?" Feng Qianjun interjected, "Ai, Tianke, Xiao Shan asked me to inform you that." Chen Xing, "Xiao Shan has news?" "Wait, Shikshan, why aren't you saying anything?" Of course Chen Xing wasn't angry. It was just, what Xian had done had far exceeded his imagination. He surmised that Xian had already begun his preparation on the day of the revival of all magic, and he was only slightly caught off guard because he was suddenly being hit with the current situation now. "If there are any problems," Xian earnestly told Chen Xing, "we can surely start to make adjustments. Everyone, from the top to bottom, in the exorcism department will all listen to you and the martial god. Even if His Majesty personally comes, he also can't order people around." Tuoba Yan said. Xiao Shan didn't look for Lu Ying. Feng Qianjun asked Tianke, "You have to do me a favor." "Your Gu Qingji, she." "Of course there's a problem." Chen Xing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He patiently said, "Shikshan, how did you teach them?" "By saying that practicing the Dao arts can make them live forever and ascend to the heavens. One shouldn't choose to be an exorcist only for their own sake. This was the case of seeking a god but worshipping Buddha. If there was an obsession in their heart, no matter how one practices the Dao, it would be useless in the end. Do you worship Buddha for a chance of enlightenment, or do you worship Buddha for your own greed? There's just no other way. These worldly people, if you follow their way and explain many things to them, they will not get it. You can only bring them in and slowly cultivate. Feng Qianjun interjected, Siadaran, you can slowly brood over this matter later. Tianke, come. Talk it out later. Xiang Shu interrupted. Put aside old matters for now and begin the meeting. Everyone finally quieted down after Xiang Shu raised his voice. Everyone took their seats in the book pavilion. Chen Xing looked at Xiang Shu, who replied to him with a signal that he should be sitting on the main seat. The exorcism department reveres you as its head, Xiang Shu's deep voice sounded. Sit. Xian reminded, the seat next to it is reserved for the martial god. The pavilion also doubled as a place to hold small-scale discussions. Ring-shaped bookshelves surrounded the middle area. The main seat was a flat couch, just like the royal tent in Chi Li Chuan, with a small table separating the two positions. Chen Xing and Xiang Shu each took a seat. At the side, circular couches were also set up in a similar manner. There were 8 in total, and the arrangement imitated the ancient Han Dynasty's style. There were 8 senior exorcists under the great exorcist, actually imitating the circular Taiji diagram. Xian took a seat, but the position of his protector was empty. Feng Qianjun looked left and right and finally chose to sit in another protector's position. Tuoba Yan spontaneously chose a protector's position as well. Like this, Xian was an exorcist without a protector, while Feng Qianjun and Tuoba Yan were protectors without their exorcists. Only Zheng Lun and Bihan sat on the same couch. At this point, the rest of the people had occupied 4 couches. When he sat down, Chen Xing clearly felt as if everything was a mere dream. The exorcism department had actually been rebuilt, it's even re-established. Chen Xing had been a little distracted up until that moment. When he looked at Xian, the other party gave a comforting smile. Discerning something from Xian's gaze, Chen Xing couldn't help but feel completely moved. He finally understood that the reason that Xian had been running all over the place to collect things, working so hard to establish this, was because he wanted to inform Chen Xing that in this world, Chen Xing and Xiang Shu weren't fighting alone. As long as all magic returned to the world, exorcists were bound to appear. This business would eventually be restored and would then become Chen Xing's strongest support. The pavilion keeper served them tea. Since everyone's all acquainted, Xiang Shu opened his mouth. He obviously didn't have much interest in any pleasantries, nor was he in the least bit surprised about the re-establishment of the exorcism department. I'll just cut to the chase, there's no need for much pleasantries. We won't wait for Xiaoshan, either. Tuoba Yan must have already relayed the event happening in Chi Li Chuan, said Xiang Shu toward everyone. If you don't know, ask him later for details. From our overseas travels for a year, we brought back the news closely related to Chen Xing, Shu, the Akala blade, and also, the final outcome of this. Chen Xing felt a little uneasy hearing the words and looked at Xiang Shu, who responded by putting his hand on the small table. He covered the back of Chen Xing's hand and clasped it ever slightly, hinting Chen Xing to be at ease. Hearing it, Feng Qianjun didn't have time to reminisce and asked, any conclusion regarding the Akala blade? Xiang Shu signaled Chen Xing, and thus, Chen Xing detailedly narrated to the people present about the past they had seen in the dream realm. Among the participants, while Xian and Feng Qianjun had known about the entire process of the revival of all magic, Tuoba Yan was completely confused hearing about the stolen year. Seeing confusion across Tuoba Yan's whole face, Xiang Shu took a sip of tea and said, don't ask anything, just listen. Zheng Lun and Bihan listened very attentively without interrupting anything. Chen Xing finally finished narrating the affairs in the dream, including telling people a small part that even Xiang Shu wasn't aware of. Hearing about the conversation between Akala and Dipankara as they cast the sword, Xiang Shu's expression shifted a little. In the end, Chen Xing said, this is what should have happened in the stolen year. So, the dream you both had in the sea, Feng Qianjun said thoughtfully, took you a whole year. In theory, Chen Xing felt that the dream didn't even span a year. After all, the scenes inside kept jumping every so often. However, according to everything that had happened, retrieving all of the events of that 1 year should indeed be possible under the Kun's magic. After listening to this, everyone started to drink tea in silence. Xiangshu gave them enough time to ponder everything over before once more saying, Xian, since you've rebuilt the exorcism department, pooling concerted efforts together, the overall situation is looking better than the first time around. I'm going to say what I have in mind now. Xian gestured with a hand. Please do so, martial god, there's no harm in words. Xiangshu clutched Chen Xing's hand as he said, first of all, Chen Xing is not allowed to repeat what he did during the silence of all magic, that is, to sacrifice himself in order to help the situation at the time. Chen Xing felt a pang in his heart the moment he heard this. As it should be, replied Xian. Although it is said that the heavenly laws are a constant, it didn't perish during Emperor Yao's era nor did it die during King Ji's reign. The great exorcist and the martial god have done so much to protect the world, so how can we helplessly watch him walk down the same path again? Feng Qianjun added, you exchanged your own life for an opportunity to restart everything over again. How can we let you throw your lives away again? Although Tuoba Yan didn't understand the previous circumstances, he still said, absolutely can't. Zhenglun and Bihan also nodded. Zhenglun said, Xiadaran reorganized the exorcism department in order to cultivate younger generations before the final war, to follow you two later into the battle. Whatever happens, everyone will protect you. This is everyone's duty. Chen Xing's eyes turned wet, and warmth welled up in his heart. He nodded and said, thank you, all of you. However, Xiangshu remarked, there's nothing that needs to be thanked for, this is their part. Now that we've made this point clear, there are 3 things for us to confront. First, use the Great Jin's manpower and financial resources to find the bronze of the Shao Mountain. Second, I'll bring in the material and recast the Akala blade. Third, we must pool our efforts to figure out a way for me to deal a final blow at Chu with the Akala blade, without injuring Chen Xing's life. Xiangshu put down the teacup and pondered for a moment. He then said in a deep voice, where and when this final decisive battle takes place, as well as how to deal with Wang Zi and the rest of his lackeys, are all issues we need to be carefully put into consideration after this. These days, Xian had already carried on with his responsibilities after returning to Jiankang. Holding more than one assembly to discuss countermeasures based on the records left behind by the Xiang family and ambushing Wen Che earlier were also parts of bigger plans. After listening, Xian said, regarding this matter, we've more or less reached a tentative conclusion. You two might as well listen to it. Chen Xing let out a sigh of relief. He finally felt incomparably relaxed and enlightened at this point. In the past, all of the problems and responsibilities had been placed on his back, and ever since Xiangshu accompanied him, it had become something that they both shared together. But back when he had said goodbye to Xian, Chen Xing had a clear realization that everyone was also striving hard to share the burden of this seemingly impossible task with him. Compared to Zhang Lu, who had been walking alone on the road that no one understood, Chen Xing thought that he was, at last, not alone. Xian motioned to Zheng Lun, returning the other party from his thoughts. Zheng Lun said, first of all, about the bronze of the Shao Mountain. We've looked over a large number of ancient texts. As the name implies, the bronze of the Shao Mountain is located at the peak of the Funiu Mountains. It was the place where Xuanyuan Shi collected and cast the sword used to fight Chu. Xiangshu's finger gently tapped the back of Chen Xing's hand as he listened attentively to the explanation. Chen Xing saw the hesitation in Zheng Lun's words and asked, today, the Funiu Mountains are located within Fujian's territory. Can we still find it if we are to mine it again? Of course we can, replied Zheng Lun. It's just, as I see it, this kind of bronze ore really won't have much impact. Xiangshu's brows wrinkled a little bit. End chapter.